Every morning for 9 years, Ethan Hayes walked into the misty edge of the Oregon woods with a thermos of tea and an old wooden stool. There, he sat and spoke to a bear. A giant grizzly. Silent. Still. Watching. He called it Solomon. Ethan shared everything with that animal, his late wife's final breath, the last words he ever said to his daughter, and the hollow echo that filled his chest ever since. The bear never moved, never growled, never left. It listened. Until one cold autumn morning, Solomon stepped out of the shadows, closer than ever before. And when Ethan said, "I don't even know if you're real," the bear replied, in a voice as deep as the forest roots, "Neither do I." What began as grief turned into revelation. Because what Ethan buried wasn't just pain. It was a secret waiting to awaken. Ethan Hayes wasn't always a man of silence. He once sang along to Fleetwood Mac in the car with his wife, Marlene. He once stayed up late building Lego castles with his daughter, Amy. He once laughed, loud, deep, and without fear. But that version of Ethan faded after loss came knocking. Marlene's death was slow and cruel. Cancer had eaten her from the inside, leaving Ethan with nothing but morphine bottles, unanswered prayers, and guilt. And Amy, just 15 then, watched her father crumble into a man she no longer recognized. The day she turned 18, Amy packed a bag, left a note, and walked out. She hadn't returned since. In the years that followed, Ethan found solace in isolation. He sold the house, bought a remote cabin in the Oregon mountains, and disappeared into a life of pine trees, snowfall, and regret. Then one morning, he saw the bear. It stood just beyond the tree line, tall, still, a silhouette against the mist. Ethan froze on his porch, coffee mug steaming in his hand. The bear didn't charge. Didn't move. Just stared. It happened again the next morning. And the next. Ethan, curious and slightly amused, took a chair out to the clearing, just within sight of the trees. The bear returned, watching. Always watching. That's when Ethan began to speak. Not because he thought the bear would respond, but because he needed someone, something, to listen. He talked about Marlene. About Amy. About how time felt like a fog he couldn't walk out of. The bear, unmoving, became his shadow therapist. He named it Solomon. Because it listened like it understood. The routine stretched into years. Every morning, tea. Stool. Solomon. Words Ethan couldn't say aloud to anyone else. A man and a bear. Bound by silence. Until one morning, the silence broke. The fog hung low that morning. Ethan stepped into the clearing with his thermos and stool, same as always. Solomon stood at the edge of the forest, partially veiled in mist. But something felt different. The air was heavier. Still. Even the birds were silent. Ethan sat, poured a cup of tea, and said, "You know, Solomon, I've told you everything. Everything I couldn't say to anyone else. I'm not even sure if you're real." He laughed bitterly. "Maybe you're just my mind keeping me company." That's when the bear moved. Not just a twitch, but several steps forward. Solomon crossed the line he had never crossed. Now, only 15 feet away, his black eyes stared into Ethan's. Ethan whispered, "What are you doing?" And the bear answered. Not with a growl. Not with a snarl. With words. "You are not alone, Ethan." The voice wasn't loud. It didn't come from a mouth that moved. It was, in the air. Like a low, ancient wind that spoke directly to the bones. Ethan dropped the cup. Tea spilled across his boot. He stumbled to his feet, nearly falling backward off the stool. "You spoke," he said. The bear blinked slowly, then added, "You have spoken for 9 winters. I have listened. But now I must speak." Ethan backed up, trembling. This isn't real. This can't be real. Solomon took one more step. Because the truth buried beneath your silence must come to light. It's time, Ethan. Ethan ran. Not out of fear of the bear, but of the truth. Of the memory he thought he had buried so deep that even time would forget it. That night, he lay awake in his cabin, clutching an old photo of Amy. And through the window, half hidden in shadow, Solomon stood watching. Still. Waiting. The next morning, Ethan didn't bring tea. He brought a shovel. The old trail behind his cabin wound through moss-covered stones and leaning pines, leading to the spot where Solomon had always waited. This time, the bear didn't linger at the forest's edge. He stood beside a fallen cedar, motionless. As Ethan approached, Solomon stepped aside. "Dig," he said. Ethan stared at the earth. "What's buried here?" The bear's eyes, so dark they looked like wells, met his. "You already know." The first shovel strike brought a jolt through Ethan's arms. Then more. The forest held its breath. At about 2 feet deep, he hit something. A box. Wooden. Water-warped. Familiar. Ethan lifted it carefully. It creaked open. Inside lay a blue mold-flecked stuffed bear. A photograph of a smiling young girl roasting marshmallows, Amy. Or a folded drawing that said "Me, Daddy," and "Mommy" in a child's hand. And a letter he had never sent. He sank to his knees. "I packed these," he said quietly, "the night she left." Memories returned like a tide, loud and suffocating. He remembered how cold he had become after Marlene died. How he isolated, drowned in silence, refused Amy's attempts to connect. One night, she asked, "Do you even see me anymore?" He said nothing. That was the last time he saw her. Now, this box was the only thing left of those years. Buried not in the ground, but under grief, shame, and silence. Tears streaked his cheeks. The bear sat beside him, its presence warm. Ethan looked up. "Why now?" "Because your silence is no longer keeping you safe," Solomon replied. "It's keeping you from being whole." That night, Ethan sat at his small kitchen table, the box of memories beside him. The photo of Amy smiled up at him, frozen in time, untouched by the years that had passed since. He picked up his old cell phone, its battery barely holding a charge. He scrolled through the contacts. Her name was still there, Amy H. With shaking hands, he tapped call. The dial tone rang once, twice, then voicemail. He hesitated, and spoke. "Amy, I don't know if this number even works. I don't know if you want to hear my voice. But I need to say this anyway. I wasn't there for you. I was drowning in my own grief and forgot that you were grieving too. I found the box. The one you packed. I remember now. I talk to a bear every day. That probably sounds insane. But somehow, he helped me hear the words I buried. I love you. I've always loved you." Click. Message sent. The next morning, Ethan brought tea to the clearing. But Solomon was gone. For the first time in years, the bear didn't appear. Ethan sat alone. The wind moved gently through the pines. A robin chirped. A deer passed in the distance. But no bear. No voice. He returned the next day. And the next. Still nothing. Then, on the 5th day, just as he was about to leave, a small bear cub stepped into the clearing. Tiny, clumsy, curious. It looked up at Ethan, then sat beside his stool. And from the woods beyond he saw him. Solomon. Not coming closer. Just watching. Then slowly, turning away. Walking back into the forest. Leaving the cub behind. Ethan didn't understand, until that night, when his phone buzzed. A message. From Amy. "Dad. I heard your message. I'm not ready to talk. But maybe we can meet." Sunday came with a sky full of clouds and air heavy with something unspoken. Ethan stood on his porch, hands trembling around a clean mug. He'd set out 2 chairs in the clearing that morning, one old stool, and one folding camp chair with a flannel blanket draped over it. A car engine hummed in the distance. Then silence. Then footsteps. Amy. She stood at the edge of the trees like a ghost of his memories, her auburn hair tied back, cautious eyes taking in the place she once called home. He offered a soft smile. "Still talking to bears, Dad?" she asked gently. He chuckled, voice catching. "Only the wise ones." They walked together to the clearing. Ethan poured her tea. He told her everything, not just about Solomon, but about the buried box, the letter, the years of silence and the regret that lived beneath it all. Amy didn't interrupt. She listened, the way Solomon had. And when he finally looked up, her eyes were full of something Ethan hadn't seen in a decade. Not anger. Not blame. But grief and recognition. I needed you back then, she whispered. I know, Ethan replied. I wasn't enough. But I'm trying now. She reached across the tea between them and took his hand. I believe you. That night, after Amy had gone to the cabin to sleep, Ethan returned to the clearing. The cub had vanished. The wind had picked up. He set a fresh cup of tea beside the old log. And he whispered into the trees. Thank you, Solomon. He waited. A breeze swept through the tall pines. And in the space between wind and silence, he swore he heard it, just once. You are not alone anymore. Not a voice. Not exactly. But something deeper. A truth spoken not in words, but in healing. And in that moment, Ethan knew. The forest had always been listening. But today, it had answered.